Money is not hard to get. Money is actually easier than you think it is. It's us and our limiting beliefs that make it hard. That we are hard on ourselves more than we have to be. But whatever it is, whatever your passion and your calling is, go after it. Because once you're there, work does not seem like work. Opportunities open up and you feel so much better.
Welcome to A Way of Thinking podcast. This podcast is dedicated to lighting the way towards greater inner peace and purpose. Hello and welcome to this episode of A Way of Thinking. I'm your host, Jessica Huang. And in this episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with co-founder of Prominence Business and Wealth Management, Sugey Piedra. Sugey and I talk about breaking cultural taboos around money and how to change your money beliefs. Sugey shares her own incredible story of budgeting, planning, and setting financial goals before quitting her job to start her own business. She also talks about the importance of monitoring your finances, being proactive in your tax planning, and diversifying income sources. So if you're dreaming of making the leap from a 9 to 5 to owning your own business, then you don't want to miss this episode. So keep tuning in to hear my conversation with Sugey. So before we dive in, let me make a few quick announcements. First off, I am running a giveaway right now. So if you sign up for my upcoming newsletter between now and the end of July, you will be entered to win a free coaching session with me. And in the newsletter, I will be sharing lots of insights, helpful tips, and helping you make sure you never miss an episode of the podcast. So definitely go to the show notes and sign up for my upcoming newsletter. And secondly, please keep tuning into the podcast because there are going to be some really exciting changes upcoming starting in the next episode. So just want to give you a little heads up that things are going to be changing in a very exciting way for the podcast. So I invite you to keep an eye out for the next episode because things are going to be shifting and changing around here, but it's all really exciting stuff. And now, without further ado, here's my episode with Sugey Piedra. Welcome to the show, Sugey.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for this opportunity to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited. When we were connected, I was really excited to have this conversation because I think there's so many things from your background for us to talk about. And I feel like money is definitely a topic that many of us like to shy away from, especially when we talk about taxes and all these kind of things where we're like, we know we have to deal with them, but we don't necessarily want to talk about them. So I'm really excited for you to be on the show today to dive in and talk a little bit about that icky subject sometimes around money. So
Yes, of course. I love to educate people on the topic, but all of us should not be afraid of our finances, our money. We need to break that, wherever it comes from, that fear, wherever it comes from, whether if it comes from our background, or something that we learned, watching our parents struggle, or wherever it may come from. There's risk involved in everything we do, but the more we learn how to play the game, the better players we become. So that's all I could say is just learn your numbers. They're trying to tell you a story.
beautiful. I love that. That is the perfect opening to this conversation. All right. So, as I always start with every episode, I would love your take first before we dive into all the money talk about what purpose means to you.
Purpose is something that I believe is comes within us, self-development, self-growth of what really makes us happy, what makes us what allows us to be in our zone of genius. A lot of people feel that my area of expertise is boring or scary, dealing with taxes, but I have found it to be my purpose. I love thinking outside the box, understanding what the rules of the game are, and then making them work for in our favor. So yes, it may be fearful for many, but for me, it's something that I really thrive in. I really love, and so I truly believe I have found my purpose. And even though I fought it tooth and nail, of course, because who wants to do taxes? I figured out that that I just have a gift and I love it. And now that I've embraced it, it really has flourished. So I definitely feel I am within my purpose. So
I love that. So, I would love to hear a little bit about your journey actually. So, when you talk about this, you were fighting it tooth and nail. Like, what was that about? I would love to hear more about that.
when I'm first generation, my parents, are immigrants, and being the oldest of, five girls, we're five girls. I've had a lot of responsibilities at a very young age, balancing, the household at age 13, 14, being able to understand what a refinance of a property is, or, things that at that age we really shouldn't have to. But we had no choice when the English language for my parents was difficult, or understanding things was difficult. And my dad was very, not mean, just very stern. And he believed that if I went to school and I learned English, that I should be able to read a contract and translate it. And so I'm sure, like many others out there, they're just like, this is not what they teach us at school. But, our parents, that's not the concept that they have. And so at a very young age, I started to help my parents with a lot of those household responsibilities. And one year, when they're doing their tax returns, they accidentally messed up the envelopes. At that point, that's when you would have to mail. So e-filing, electronic submissions did not exist. And they got the documents confused. And so I couldn't figure it out. And so I went to my neighbor next door, an older white gentleman, and always very helpful to help me with many things. And so I go to him with the tax documents, and he goes, "Oh, taxes." He goes, "I don't know. Like, I don't know how this goes." And I'm just like, how can you not know? You're white. I felt that because my parents and us, we were Hispanics or immigrants, that's why they didn't know. And I thought that somebody that was born and in the country that would know. But at that point, I realized that taxes was just something foreign for everybody, something that it didn't matter where you come from. It didn't matter what your background is, whether you're wealthy or not. It's just something that is complicated. And so I took it upon myself to learn more about it. And it became like my critical, thinking kind of a thing. And I started to figure out putting a number here, following it and adding it there, and then adding and subtracting numbers from that equation and moving the number to the other form. So at that point, everything was, following pamphlets, and everything was handwritten. And so nothing like nowadays with TurboTax, and you plug in a number and it just does what it's supposed to do. So I kind of got a really good basic understanding of taxes at a very young age. And then, early on, maybe I want to say around 19, everybody knew I was doing my parents' taxes, like my grandma and aunts and uncles. And so all of a sudden, I had like a little bit of a clientele from just my family and friends that wanted me to do their taxes. And so I got licensed. I got licensed at age 22 or 21, 22, somewhere around there. I got licensed, and it became my side hustle, because at that point now it was going beyond just like the relatives. That it was more of their coworkers and friends and stuff. So I got licensed, and it became my little side hustle. But I didn't like it. It's not something that I wanted to do. I didn't want to make a career out of it. I wanted to be an attorney, and I wanted to learn more about law, and I wanted to be paralegal and anything that had to do with law. And so I started going to school for that. But I got a job at a CPA firm as a receptionist. The accountant there kind of took a liking on to me, and she was like, "You're very good with numbers." She goes, "You're very good to think outside the box." And I think that had to do with the law side that I liked, and then the accounting side that I was naturally good at. So together it was perfect to work with the IRS, because it's based on a lot of law, and then there's numbers, but it's not complicated math. It's just, adding and subtracting different figures. So it became something very natural to me to go ahead and start that. And at that point, I was a young mom, and I just wanted to make a living. I wanted to make good money. And so I just kind of started from the bottom, growing from there. But what I've discovered now, and I'm 46 now. I started my business 6 years ago. And the reason I took off from working for the typical CPA was because I felt that our industry is broken. When you deal with taxes, people do their taxes and then you don't see them again until the following year. So typically with the same problems, the same issues, the same mistakes were made, no changes were ever made, and you don't have the time to really consult with them because it's a volume industry. So whenever you go to a tax office, your typical tax preparer has stacks of papers everywhere. They have, maybe a line out the door, whether it's H&R Block or CPA or some sort of an enrolled agent, any tax professional, they have tons and tons of clients. And so there's no time to consult with every single one of them and tell them, hey, did you know that if you do this, or if you contribute to your 401k, or if you buy a rental property, or if you do this or that, you could make a difference in your finances. So there's no education there for the client. And so I wanted to change that. But the only way to do that was to start my own business, because when I went to the idea to my current boss at the time, she just said, it's a great idea, but there's no time. We have 3,000 clients to service, 4 months to do tax returns. There's no way that we could do an hour consultation for every client. So I felt that I wasn't fulfilled. And like you mentioned, what our purpose is, I felt I was cheating the client, not giving them what I knew. Even though I knew all this stuff, I couldn't share it because I had no time to do it. So I wasn't happy, and I started my business and I changed that. I said, even if I only help a handful of clients, I want to be able to make a difference in their world and their finances. And that's what I did. So when I started the business with my sisters, we decided that every client was going to have at least a 30-minute consultation with me. We're at 45-minute consultations now. But it helps. It makes that little bit of a difference to be able to say, if you shift this thing, this number, or this action that you're doing, you're going to end up keeping an extra 3,000 next year, or an extra, 5,000. Or if you buy a rental property, you don't have to pay taxes on passive income. And so now clients are like, I never heard of that. Can you tell me more? Right? And so that's where I truly have found that I have this purpose, this calling, and a passion behind what I do.
I love that. I think it's amazing to be able to take something which I don't think most people would see that element of purpose in doing tax preparation. So I think that's amazing that you had this vision, and extra amazing that you actioned on it, right? Because often we will have these ideas going like, something's missing
Hmm.
here, but there is so much that can hold us back from actually pursuing it. So for you to have the gusto to go, I have to create it
Yes.
myself. If there's a gap, I have to create it myself. I think that's
And it
incredible.
also helps when I meet with a lot of clients, right? Whether they're W-2 earners or they are, self-employed individuals. And one of the questions I ask are like, what are your goals? What are you trying to do? And then they're like, why is my tax person asking me that, right? And I'm like, because when you tell me what you want and I'm working on your file, in the back of my mind, I'm already thinking of option one, two, three that I could potentially help you with to get along on those goals. And so some clients will be like, look, I'm going to retire in 5 years. Or, look, I just had a baby and I would love to have some funds available for college. Or, I just got married and we both have these really good jobs and, we're stuck paying all these taxes. What can we do? What can be different? And so now I'm kind of like working on their stuff, looking at everything, because it's literally like a puzzle, right? You're moving pieces, but I shouldn't be having to move them just for tax purposes. I should be helping moving these puzzle pieces based on what their goals are. And so sometimes I will have clients and I'll share my story about how I went from, I've always tried to make good money in my career once I figured out that I was doing taxes for a living. So quitting a six-figure job, W-2, that you have a consistent paycheck, to going into a business that you don't know if it's going to succeed. You don't know if you're going to have clients on, knocking on your door or not. and having a mortgage and a family, and you're like the main breadwinner. So believe me, the pressure was there. I don't think I would have ever been able to do it without the support of my sisters, because they had more of the guts that I lacked. I was overthinking absolutely everything. And they were just like, you don't see the potential you have. There's people that, flock to you. They need this. You need to take that leap. So now I'm that support system for some of my clients, and I show them. I'm like, look, this is how much your side hustle is making. This is how much your W-2 job is bringing you. So we have to just meet that gap. How do we do it? And then I'll explain to them how I did it. It took us 6 months to really take that leap of faith. So in those 6 months, there was already a plan. So what am I doing? I had to get my advertising up. I had to lease the office. I had to get business cards. I had a plan, all this stuff before I actually pulled the trigger, so that when I actually quit my job, the next day my door was open in my office, and I already had scheduled appointments, and I already had, advertising going out, so that I wouldn't have to do all of that stuff when I didn't have an incoming, paycheck. That was the big thing for me, is that I wanted to close that gap as much as possible. But with proper planning, I tell clients all the time, and I get to see it with the clients that are really there, and how they flourish, and how grateful they are that I supported their dream of wanting to quit their 9 to 5 to go to, doing whatever it is that, they've been doing as a side hustle. A lot of side hustles are very successful. They're just not given the time that it needs, because we're stuck in a 9 to 5 kind of a position. So I always encourage, if it's your calling, it's your passion, you will make it work. It will require work, but you can make it work. You just have to make sure that you close that gap as much as possible.
I love what you're speaking about, this idea of kind of like giving yourself the runway that you're preparing really for that ability to make that shift, instead of feeling like, oh, I have no idea what's going to
Yeah.
happen when I actually leave the job. So that speaks to this kind of, because the thing I was thinking about is a lot of it is getting closer to your numbers. And sometimes we want to shy away from it because we don't want to look at what's going on. So, I mean, you speak to having a certain level of comfort with your numbers. So, what do you feel like, obviously you have kind of had to really look at your numbers because of your position with your family. But what do you think is really important for getting people to feel more comfortable with like looking at their numbers with their taxes and all these kind of things that can often feel like I don't want to look at it?
Yeah, I think honestly, I don't want to say it's a conspiracy, right? But there's a reason this stuff is not taught to us in school, right? Our curriculum, if you go to public school, private school, no one's talking to you about finances, how to make money, how a business runs, or anything like that. Once you finish, even in college, it's just, even if you go to business, it's touched, but it's not really taught at the level that you need to know it. And so it's all self-development that we have to do. And but then also within our cultures, it's taught that you don't talk about money. You don't share how much money you make. You don't, because it's maybe bragging, or I don't know what it is, but I just know that no one talks about how much they make. And so it adds that component of, it's a secret, or am I supposed to look at this kind of a deal, right? This fear kind of a thing. So what happens when we do that is we miss out on opportunities. So when I mentioned that our numbers are trying to tell us a story, there's patterns that we could follow. So when I mentioned that I had a plan when I quit my job of how my business was going to be running, there's certain investments. I had to pay for those business cards to be printed. I had to pay for the business license to get started. The corporation to get started. All this good stuff. So I was counting on my regular job to fund those things before I quit my job. So that was one thing. I had to look at my personal finances to see how much is my mortgage, how much is my utilities. So when I quit my job, I knew that I needed to make $3,000 that month, or else I wasn't going to have the money for the lease, or the money for my car payment, whatever, right? And so Now you have a number that you're going after because you have to feed your family. And so what is it going to take? And so you just work backwards. If you need $3,000, how many clients do you need in order to make those $3,000? And then, let's say I needed, 20 clients. Okay, well, how many weeks are in a month? 4 weeks. That means I gotta get, 5 clients a week. And so it was just kind of breaking it down. How am I going to find these 5 clients? And so I learned that I had to go be very active. So in the beginning, even though my calendar wasn't booked with clients, it was booked with networking events. I was getting out there. I was looking for places that others that needed my services were going to be. And if I could meet with one person, great. But if I can be in a room of 10, 20, 15 people, that's where I wanted to be. And so it just became that math equation. Okay, I got to meet 10 people so that maybe one will say yes. And I just kept doing that over and over for the first year of business. And, we, within that first 5 years, we reached 7 figures in our business. And it was not easy. I'm not going to say that it was easy. It required a lot of hustling. But now we get to strategize and we can just shave off the clients we don't want to work with, the clients that don't fit what we really need, what we really want, the kind of business we're trying to operate. So now we have choices, right? We get to really work with the people that want our advice. Because what's the point of, I've always had business coaches and I've always made the investment with my business coaches and life coaches, self-development. And so one of them told me, he goes, what's the point of you wasting your time and breath on the individuals that you see no change year in, year after year? He goes, you're giving them the message, but they're not ready to receive it. So you need to cut those cords. And at that point, it made so much sense because I can make a list of clients now and I'd be like, look, this client's been my client for 3 years and nothing's changed. They don't follow my advice. They're never ready. So I need to let that one go and open the door to the one that's hungry and ready to take my advice and move forward. And I can see the shift, So that is now options that we could take, things that we can do because our business can afford to do something like that, But again, how did we do that? Every month we look at our bookkeeping. Every month we look at our profit and loss statement. So when you look at my files, you can see the first month I opened the doors, how much money came in. Even if it was $250, it didn't matter. What we wanted to see is, okay, our overhead is $600. We got to go out and get 2 more clients, 3 more clients. So those numbers are trying to tell us a story, a pattern. The more my revenue grew month to month, I knew that the work that I was doing about networking and getting out there was working. So I knew I had something. I had to go out and do it more. And then maybe I bought an ad in the local magazine. Saw that nothing came from it. Why am I going to spend $3,000 on that ad if no client came in from that ad? So shave that off of my overhead, right? Let's invest in something else. And so that's what I kept doing over and over and over. And every month we just meet, even if it's a brief 1-hour meeting on a Monday morning of the new month and say, hey, how did we close last month? These are the numbers. And so though you get to see where your money's coming from, where your money is going, and if what kind of changes should you do? How should your goals change for that next month? So when taxes come around, I'm not worried about them because I've already projected all my income, projected my taxes. Clients love that we meet on a quarterly basis because we get to project and we get to catch things before the year is over. So let's assume that you make $1 million and you weren't expecting to make $1 million. Well, guess what? Let's throw in all the strategy we can think of. Let's hire the kids. Let's, prepay some things. Let's fund the 401k. Let's, whatever it is that we have to do to try to bring that liability down before the year is over. Once the year's over and you go see your tax preparer, it's just to add and subtract some numbers. There's not a whole lot of strategies that could be applied because the calendar year is now over. You can't backdate something. So it just changes the game. And Uncle Sam loves that because he wins at that point. He's the one that keeps our money. So we want to shift that idea from, anybody and everybody. And the purpose of me doing these podcasts is for that, to tell people that there is other ways to do your taxes and to plan and to strategize, during the current calendar year.
I think that is so powerful. It's amazing that idea because it's true. I think most people, when they hear the word tax, they just think of, oh, well, when April comes around, I gotta have my taxes done. Like that's the only time we ever think about it. And you speak to this idea of, well, what if you're perpetually thinking about it at different cadences and being able to make adjustments and do things that are going to benefit you when the tax season comes around and those numbers are getting ticked and tallied. So
Yeah.
I think that's amazing. So one thing I'm curious, like to go back to when you were talking about making that shift into starting your business, when you were talking about like you got all these things prepared, did you, because I think a lot of people would think like, oh, I want to have like a roster of clients already. I want to be making all that money. Did you have that already, like when you actually made the leap, or how did that go for
I
you?
had more than I thought I had when had the side hustle of my kitchen table kind of a thing, right? But what I had was a database, right? Let's say I had 100 friends and family, but I was charging them $50. I was charging them $80. Maybe $100 was the most I was charging somebody because they were my friends, they were family. And I'd be like, oh yeah, just give me $50, just give me $80 kind of a deal, right? So it wasn't really a business side hustle kind of a thing, right? But what it was a database. So what I did is when I was about to open my office, my business, I sent them all a invitation to my grand opening. Okay. And in that little tidbit of the invitation, I included a little note that said, thank you for supporting me all these years and all the compliments you have given me. Because they did. They'd be like, oh my gosh, you're great. I love the way you explain things to me. And remember, I learned how to explain such a difficult topic because I had to translate it to my parents. I had to translate it in a different language to somebody that didn't have a high school education. Do you know what I'm saying? So when I talk to clients, I don't use a lot of technical terms. I don't need to. It's just having them understand their numbers. So I put that in the note and I said, you know, I want to keep my doors open. I want to have a successful business where we can flourish. Will you please spread the word and send me referrals, your friends, your family? As before, I was turning away referrals. I didn't want anyone to know because it was taking time away. I had a full-time job. Tax season, I was working, freaking 50 hours a week. Like it was just crazy. I didn't want more business, right? So I kept saying I only would do it for friends and family. But when I did that, what I did is I asked them to send me now their coworkers, their friends, their family. And so when we opened up our doors and we had our grand opening, all our friends and family showed up. But that first tax season we had, I was shocked. I was shocked at how many people were coming and the phone was ringing because I asked. And so a lot of times we forget to ask. We forget to ask our family for help, our coworkers, our friends. And, if one person just brings one person, you've doubled your business. So that's all we wanted. And that helped. That helped a lot. So that's what I tell my clients now when they have a side hustle is collect the database. Even if you're doing a farmer's market and people just walk up to your booth and don't buy anything, get an email address, get a phone number, give them something that they will give you their information, because when you decide to jump and take the leap of faith and quit your job, this is the people that you need to reach out to and announce that you just opened your place or that you are having this grand opening or this special or whatever it is, because that's who will help you bring in more business.
I love that. And I'm curious because along those lines, I think a lot of people can feel weird like charging the people that they
Hmm.
know. So how is that kind of venture, especially as you mentioned that you started out kind of doing it for little bits just to do it for them and help them out kind of
I think
thing.
that was the hardest. That was the hardest part. That didn't take place until I started my third year, I believe it was, third or fourth year. Um, because I was turning into that volume based type of a business. because I was trying, remember, it's me and my sister. So we're all in this pool. And in order for us to support all of us, even if you have staff, it doesn't matter that it's my sisters, even if you have staff, you want to pay your receptionist, you want to pay your admin staff, your advertising team, your coaches. So, you want to have a successful business. But I needed volume because I was charging everybody $150, $200. So there was no way for me to do what my purpose was and be charging that. So then I stopped. And if my coaches or some of the coaches I had in the beginning of my journey listen to this, they'll probably laugh because this is the first thing they tell you. But I fought it tooth and nail. And one of my coaches just literally bluntly just told me, it's your culture that doesn't let you see your value or your worth or whatever. And I was hurt by it because I didn't think it was just my culture or the way that I had grown up that I cared. I truly did care about my clients. I truly did care about my parents and their financial journey. And so I was like, why am I getting in trouble for caring? But then when this other coach came in and said, look, every time you don't bill accordingly or you give somebody a discount or you don't charge for your services and you're like, it's okay, you're my friend. She's like, you're stealing the time that you need to be with your kids, to be with your family, to be having dinner at home. And so you got to think of yourself as well. And you have to put yourself and your kids first, your sanity. And so once I started to look at it that way, sometimes clients didn't even ask me for a discount and I would just give it because it was in me. And so they're like, you need to stop that. So it was retraining. And for that, I will always be grateful for my coaches. I read the book, We Should All Be Millionaires by Rachel Rogers. And that was a women empowering book about how mothers feel guilty for running a business and feeling guilty for not being at home to make dinner, feeling guilty for not doing the laundry, feeling guilty about just about everything, right? And so I was able to multitask those things, but put them in priority. The reason I started this business was to be able to help those that wanted to be helped. And so that's where I started to shift through the clients that didn't want the message, that weren't doing anything with my message, and saying, we need to shave those off. So I started buying back my time in a sense. And then the people that really like my service and really like my advice and really take advantage of all of the things that we go through together, they don't mind paying me whatever I want to get paid because they see the value in working with someone like me who's out there searching strategies to save them taxes. So a lot of the times clients are like, you saved me 30 grand and you're charging me, 1,500, like that's nothing, right? And I'm not charging them based on what they saved, but I also want people to know that if I'm going to put time and energy in something, that you're going to get billed for my time. But if it saves them 30 grand, they don't care that I wasted 2 hours or that I billed them for 2 hours, kind of a deal. So it pays off. You just have to show and demonstrate your clients the value that you bring to the table.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you were saying there, especially around like discounts, because I totally understand that. I feel like that's such, I don't know if it's an immigrant thing or what, but I know from my culture too, like, it's always hunting for a
Yeah.
discount, trying to get a sale on everything. And so I think that's like so ingrained. And so I totally get you there, where it's like, I feel, yeah, it's like we feel
Yeah.
obliged to do that because that's the culture. And yes, especially I feel like when you're trying to be in your purpose,
Mhm.
it's like I want to help so badly that I would do it for
Right.
free practically,
That's
right?
exactly right. Yes. So that took a little, it took a little bit of more soul searching, right? Really figuring out my purpose of why. Why am I doing this? Why do I want to have a better life where, I provide for my kids and my family and my household? And if that's my why, then why am I stealing time from them? If that's my purpose, why am I stealing time from them? And so again, it wasn't adding up. And once you start to figure that out, you become more, you set your boundaries, even with your clients. And so sometimes it's funny because we think that we have to give a discount, right? But when you go to the store, you always hear they discounted something because they hiked up the price anyways. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, why are we giving a true discount? Like, let's look at what our overhead is. And this is when I started to really look at our numbers from that perspective. Is if it really costs, I have a fixed cost on this widget, there's no way that I can discount it more than this amount because now I'm stealing from the company. I'm stealing from myself. I'm going to close my doors because I can't keep surviving this way. So there's also a point where once you realize how much that true cost is to you, including your pay, you realize that you can't be discounting further than a certain number because at that point you're in the negative and now you can't survive that way. No matter how good you are, no matter what your purpose is, no matter how many clients and how many people love your product, if you don't have your true costs, you're going to go bankrupt. You're going to close the doors eventually. And this is why you see a lot of businesses in the first year, the first 2 years fail, or 5 years down the line they're trying to figure out what happened is because they run out of their savings or they're way in debt that they can't get out of it. And so they end up having to close their doors because they weren't looking at their numbers close enough, frequently enough to catch the bleeding before it just killed them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, what do you feel like is your kind of first steps in terms of helping someone who isn't really like looking at their numbers, who is kind of shying away from all of this? Like, how do you really help them like get more comfortable in that space?
So we have to know why we're looking at the numbers, right? I got to know where you're at, what are your goals, where am I taking you kind of a direction, right? So when you ask that question, it'll depend on what the goals are for that individual. Let's say we have a W-2 earner. Is their goal to maybe retire early, to maybe have financial freedom and one day, not have to go work the 9 to 5? Is it to build a college fund? We got to dig a little bit. What is that goal? Because then we got to figure out the time frame that we have that we're working with. Sometimes I get clients that say, well, I'm going to retire in 5 years. This is what I want to do. Okay, so we figure out what do they need on a monthly basis to survive, to pay for their mortgage, whatever expenses they have. Maybe they're going to travel. And then we figure out what is it that we need. How much passive income do we need? Is this the investments we have? Because it could be through investments, dividends, and all that good stuff. Where's the money, the true source of the money going to be coming from? But as you could tell, everything I mentioned has to do with our numbers. Throw all of your assets on the table. It's like a board game. Figure out where is money really coming from. And when you are working for your money, which majority of us are, then we run the risk that if something happens to us, what happens? No more money's coming in. So you want to look at that as well. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and this is a lot of the way that I designed my consultation in my business was because I wanted clients to know that there's other ways to get revenue into your pocket to create assets that pay you money so that you don't have to go to work. So you're making money even while you sleep, kind of a concept, right? Nowadays it's not as easy because things are so expensive. But again, our lifestyles are expensive sometimes too. And there's so many things that we could cut back on if our goal is something else. So when I acquired my first properties there in Ohio, and there were a $17,000 down payment 3 years ago. So a $17,000 down payment is a lot more affordable than if you're trying to buy a house here in California and you need a $100,000 down payment. So when you have a high earning individual, when you have individuals that could save 17,000 or 20,000 or whatever, then we could go buy properties in different states. And that's where my real estate out of state came in. And I have a webinar every month to talk about these properties that I have teams. I've created teams that will help us buy and manage these properties in Ohio, in Alabama, in Mississippi. I had a call this morning with a property in Oregon. So again, there's places out there that maybe you can't afford your property in New York or in California, but maybe your money will stretch further in a different state. And now you have to learn those rules and those how to play that game. And so this is what I teach my clients in that monthly webinar, is showing them how we can make our money stretch in those other places. And now we get cash flow, or we get asset appreciation. And so we start to build assets in these portfolios, and people love that. There's so many different things that we could do once we start once we start to learn how to make money, or make money work for us instead of us working for money. So it'll depend on everybody's journey. But I always want to tell clients, follow us on social media, listen to things like this, read a book that'll teach you on more about passive income, and your curiosity will take off because no one else is talking about this stuff.
I love that. And so, yeah, passive income is definitely something like you hear a lot about. And yeah, I'm curious, like, do you find that that is something that's really important to kind of establish, especially if you're someone that's moving from, let's say, steady work into something that's more inconsistent, like entrepreneurship often is?
Yes, there's one thing that the W-2 earners have that sometimes the self-employment people want, which is purchasing power. When you are going to go for a loan, the bank wants to see your tax returns or your finances or your financials, right? When you're a W-2 earner and you make good money, what happens is the bank looks at your financials and it's easy for them to prove that you work and that you make X amount of money. When you're self-employed, there's a lot more digging, right? Are your financials in order? You know, how much money is really coming in? How much money are you left with? You know, what are your expenses? So sometimes when you have a self-employed individual, they're trying to report less income because they don't want to pay taxes, right? But reporting less income or losses or showing that you're poor will also chop you from going out and getting those other assets, because the bank is going to say, I can't lend you money, you're poor. You know, you didn't make money, so how am I supposed to lend you money, in a sense? So we want to keep in mind that paying taxes is not a bad thing, right? We just want to pay our fair share. We want our taxes and all our finances to be in order, so that when we go to the bank and say, hey, I want to borrow money for my first rental property, or buy the building where your office is at, or something like that, that they look at your financials and they're strong and ready for you to create and get those assets that you need to create that passive income and to create that real wealth that you're looking for. So it all plays a part. It doesn't happen overnight sometimes, but you just need a sense of direction. And like I said, working with somebody like us, and there's a handful of tax planners out there, but having somebody on your team that'll guide you through all of this, financial planners, those are really great people to have in your team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting because I think that's often part of what keeps people from making any kind of big shift is that that security, right? That security of being a W-2, having that paycheck coming in steady, having it reflect, and it makes your numbers a lot easier, right? It's like every month I know I get this amount every single month and this is how I can spend it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's definitely its own challenge when you're moving away from that. Like, what do you feel like has been beneficial to you or to the people that you work with in terms of making that shift?
Yeah, I've had a couple clients who have helped through that transition. You know, definitely when now that they're more successful, more stable, when we ask those questions, they will share how valuable to have me in their corner was, because I kept saying, you could do this. Now go do this, go try that. So just brainstorming sessions, right? Because that's what we would call it. It was brainstorming sessions of saying, look, this is what I did. This worked for me. You go try it, see if it works for you. So to make that transition, you want to make sure you know what your expenses are to maintain your household. That's number one. And then number two is, how are you going to be making that kind of money the minute that you quit your job, in order for you not to go living in the streets, kind of a deal, right? So what is that gonna take? And so thinking outside the box is, especially if you are selling an item or if you're selling a service, is where are the people that you need? Where are the clients that you need? Who are your power partners? So I learned about power partners really early on, and I would have meetings with with one person that already had the database that I needed, that I complemented. So for example, I would meet a lot with mortgage lenders, right? And the mortgage lenders, their biggest complaint is that people have crappy taxes, that their taxes are not filed, that their tax preparer makes, doesn't do their taxes correctly, whatever it is. So I became friends with a lot of mortgage lenders. And I would say, you run into a client that if they had their taxes in order, you can fund them, send them my way. I will help them get all their financials in order. I will help them file all their the taxes they haven't filed. I will help them clean up their financial world if you refer them to me. And so before you know it, I had all of these mortgage lenders sending me their clients. I would go do talks in offices of 10 and 15 mortgage lenders. And I would get to tell them all how I work and how I can help them, how I can help their clients. And so all of them would start referring business to me. And then I'd be like, okay, who else would be a good power partner? Financial advisors. Financial advisors deal with clients and look at their numbers and see how much taxes they pay, wish they would pay less, send them my way. So I was looking for ways that by talking to one person, I would have access to their full database. And so those were good things for us to do. So when you're going to transition from being a W-2 person to an entrepreneur person, you've got to think of who has that database that you're going to complement and start making friends or relationships with them before you quit your job. Knowing that the minute that you open up your doors fully, that the people, those resources are going to help you feed and fund your company.
Absolutely. I think that's such great advice. I think that we often have a lot of things that are holding us back in that space. And, it's definitely like I think of all the fears that come up that keeps us from really wanting to have these conversations of putting ourselves out there. So I love you kind of emphasizing though, it's like you tackle one person and it opens up the door to so many.
Yeah.
So I think that's really
And
powerful.
sometimes it's also going back to our culture or just our family dynamic in general. I was one of the very first ones to be an entrepreneur, to be self-employed. So my mom was scared for me. My dad was scared for me. Don't do it. You have such a good paying job. Why are you going to do this? And then you have like your spouse or, just the overall pressure of, is this going to work? And so I would call them the negative Nancy little chatter, right? Is this going to succeed? And this is why I say I wouldn't have been able to do it without my sisters supporting me, because we were all in the same boat and we're like, look, we help others succeed, their businesses, wherever we go. We're such hard workers. We're going to make our business succeed. We're not going to sink. We're going to swim. And so together we would conquer and we would divide each other, and one person would go one place, I would go to another place, and we would come back and be like, look how many business cards I got. I met this person and let's have coffee with them next week. They have they may want us to do a talk at their office or whatever. And so we would come back, and that was the other thing, follow up, right? Sometimes we go out network, we come back with all these business cards, but we don't do anything with it. So now it's like there's a process. You put the email addresses in an Excel sheet so that it goes in, your newsletter sent out or your marketing sent out to them. And then the phone numbers are stored so that we can follow up with them. Sometimes if it's a good prospect, we go have coffee with them the following week. And think of ways that we can complement their clients and their business. So all of that can be done way before you quit your job. And then just say, hey, next month I'm fully open in my business and I want my calendar full of appointments, or I want to have already all these pre-orders for the widget that I'm selling. So all of that can be done. I know that COVID helped a lot when people were getting paid for being home, but yet they were able to like pump up on their side hustle and really get it going. My only fear with that is when we're in an industry that shifts and somebody doesn't, it could be the real estate industry, stock market, anything that the construction, that there's a shift in the industry and it slows our business down, is how do we continue to have that type of income or those resources coming in? And that's why diversifying our income from different sources of passive income is so important, because when one business is down, the other one could be flourishing. So it makes up that gap that we may be having. So a lot to think about when it comes to our numbers. There's many different ways that we can make it work. We just have to think outside the box.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious actually, because along the lines when you were talking about your family being concerned for you, I mean, was it extra concerning because you're roping in your siblings? So it's like not only are they worrying about you, but they're worrying about your sister. And so, like, what was that experience like of really having multiple siblings working into this new business? Because I definitely hear you where it's like entrepreneurship is not, I feel like something that we don't really touch as
Yeah,
immigrants, right? Where it's like you go the steady
the secure
route.
way.
Yeah.
Yes. And like I said, I'm here older. I'm here at 40 years old, opening up my business, you know. And when I have a good, steady job, and it was easy. It was corporate world. I could literally just retire, you know, if that's what I wanted, kind of a deal. And that's what my parents really were upset. They're like, "You're gonna let go of your health benefits and your 401k," and I'm just like, really, you know, they couldn't see the bigger picture. But it was cute, and at the time, it was not cute. It was very, it was scary. It was scary because I knew that my parents also relied on us for a lot, and my parents retired, or you know, at a very young age. And even though may not need, or they have a very humble upbringing, very humble lifestyle, they maybe didn't need us for thousands of dollars, but they knew that if they needed something, that they can count on us to help. And yet here I am quitting my job, you know. And I knew that I couldn't go to them specifically for money either. So I had to figure out how were we going to do this. This is why there was very little room for error. We had to be successful, because I had to go back to work if I wasn't, you know. There was not a lot of room for me to be like, oh, I'll just take a month off or whatever. It's like, no, we had to hustle. And because it's a family owned business, I couldn't just call my sister and be like, hey, I can't make my mortgage payment this month. Can you lend me some money? Because my sister was in the same boat that I was, you know? so,
Yeah.
so there was definitely a lot of pressure there. But it was a lot of fear of the unknown. And so believe me, if anyone out there is listening and they don't have the support, we were there. The support of, yes, they kind of cheer you on, but then they're not, because they're afraid for you. So my parents did play a big role in, what are you doing? You know, you're quitting such a good job, and now your sister's going to quit her job. Like, you know, it was a very stressful time in that sense, but we believed in our mission. We believed in what we wanted to do. And when you have that purpose behind you, I think that that fuels your fire. You know that you're going to succeed. You know that you're going to make it happen. But I can guarantee you, you will, if you pay attention to your numbers. Because your numbers are going to tell you whether you're not working hard enough, or all the hard work you're doing isn't paying off. So you have to look at those numbers. And with us, all the numbers, everything indicated to the growth. So we just kept going. We kept going, and we're very proud of where we're at for the small window that we've been open. But it's all possible. You just need to make sure that you pay attention to those numbers.
I love that. So, along those lines, do you feel like that you had any kind of money beliefs around being, that you had to really overcome as you made that transition, especially coming from an immigrant
A
background?
lot. Mindset plays such a big role. And I'm very grateful that in the very beginning, within the first year of us opening, one of our very first investments was to hire a coach. And the mindset shift that came along with that. I didn't know all the limiting beliefs that I was having, but seeing how by us changing personally, internally, that inner growth, that it was flourishing our business and allowing our business to grow as well. And so once I started to, because I would fight it tooth and nail, here I am, 1 + 1 = 2, right? So you can't tell me that by me changing this or that belief, that it's going to shift my business. So I would fight it. But at the end of the day, the coaches were correct. And the minute that I started really believing in everything we were putting into the business, shifting the way we talk, shifting the way our positive thinking, what we call the manifesting our next client kind of a deal. All of that worked in our favor. And the more we practiced it, the more we did it, the better our business kept flourishing, kept going. And that made us happy. That made us like, oh my gosh, this works, so let's continue to do it. But I think it's also because it's small, achievable goals, right? When I break down to you in the beginning of the podcast, I broke down to you when you're trying to reach an X amount of money, how many clients is it going to take? How many days are in a month and all of that? So we were breaking down our goals literally to the day. And so what that did is it made us work those 8 hours to get that one client. So if I needed 5 clients, then, I had to work just as hard every single day to get those clients, and then they would be there. So we would call it manifesting, but believe me, it wasn't like I was sitting under a tree somewhere just praying for a client. I was out there hustling, and it would happen. So the work together with, shifting that mindset and then allowing it all just to kind of come in and come through us was working. It has worked. I truly believe in it now, and I'm very grateful for everybody that I've had along, my journey to be able to help me see that for, how all that would work.
Amazing. So I want to finish out with like talking a little bit about this phrase of financial freedom. Because I feel like that gets thrown out a lot is this idea of like, we want financial freedom. Like, how do you really define financial freedom?
Yes. So, we all have to have our own version of financial freedom. What is financial freedom? But along the journey of even with me of starting this business, and I will just tell you my story behind my financial freedom. I felt that having like the nice car or being able to have like all this nice stuff, material stuff, was financial freedom. It wasn't. Okay, that's not financial freedom. Not to me. Maybe it is to somebody out there. But when you're working so hard for something, you realize that, is there a void that you're trying to fill? So financial freedom to me was more of being able to block off the time on my calendar that I need because I need to go to my daughter's, school event, because I need to go and, take my son to the doctors, because I need to be there for my mom and dad and take them and do something with them or whatever. To be able to take a family vacation and be able to block off the time for me to go and be present with them. So that was all of a sudden, I didn't care about the car. I didn't care about the shoes. I didn't care about the purses. What I wanted was for us to be together as a family and be able to say, look what we have accomplished. The fact that all of us can be in one place at the same time and enjoy the beauty of our family. To me, that ended up becoming, like, I realized that afterwards, that's what I wanted. That was my financial freedom. Now I'm in a journey of, I love all of that, but now what I want is I really want to be able to block off the time, meet with the clients that I want to meet, but I want to block off the time and not feel like I'm not making money because I blocked off the time. That's where passive income comes in. Because when I started to invest in properties and I started to do that, I started to realize that money was coming in whether I showed up or not. So when you start to realize what is really passive income going to do for you, or other sources of income, or learning how to graduate from that self-employed individual to a true business owner, a true investor, that's a whole other set of homework and rules that you have to learn. And that's my journey right now, is I want to be able to do what I do, but I don't have to be here to get it all accomplished, so that the company's working with or without me, that all of that is still being done. Clients are still happy. And that's the journey that I'm in right now, is trying to figure out a way that I could exit, still be present, but not have to do the day-to-day work, so that I could go out and do whatever it is that I want to do. And that is my new financial freedom journey right now. So I think it evolves over time. And everybody's financial freedom is going to be different depending on what it is that, you're soul searching for.
I love that. So I'm curious along those lines, like, you've brought up a lot around coaches and getting the help that you need to kind of support you on this journey. Like, if you even talk about this next stage of financial freedom, like what do you see as like how do you find the right support that you need to be able to reach these next goals and to be able to move in directions that you've never moved in before?
I kind of always felt that because I was searching for it, they would be in my path, right? I would find a lot of different good people. And I've been very blessed to have different types of coaches. But I would say I'm graduating from one coach to another and so on. All my coaches have been great. All of them have a meaningful part in my journey. But you need to also interview them and figure out which one is going to fulfill the part that you have a calling for at that moment. Some have more of a spiritual essence. Some of them have a very business oriented type of a way of teaching. Some of them have, want to dig back to your upbringing and, your childhood traumas and stuff like that. All of them have valuable lessons. You just have to figure out which one is going to be paying off for what it is that you're searching at that moment. All I know is that I've done work in all those areas, and I feel that all of them have done something amazing for me to be able to unlock my next course, my next journey, and allowing me to understand myself a little bit more, be graceful with myself, learn to love myself for who I am. And all that, even though it sounds silly, it required teaching. It required permission, which is so odd. The first time I hired somebody to help me clean the house, I felt so wrong because my mom would make me do all the chores and I had to be the one doing all the house cleaning. And so I was like, how can I hire someone to help me clean the house when that's supposed to be my job? But who says that's supposed to be your job? And it was more like, you're a new type of individual and you need that help in order to be successful in this other area. And I had to come to my kids, and tell them the same thing and say, hey, I'm not like grandma type of a mom. I'm not going to be home waiting for you from school with a warm dinner and, we're going to sit here and just kind of like, read a book kind of a deal. That's not your mom. Your mom is an entrepreneur. She's out hustling, she's out doing this, conquering the world. But when I'm here with you, we're going to go on these vacations and we're going to do this stuff. And, this is why you have your own bedroom. And this is why, you have all the things you want kind of a deal. So they kind of allowed me that grace and loved me for who I am. But I had to ask them because they kept pointing the finger and saying, you're not like grandma. Grandma has food on the table every day. You don't. So it was like, that's a different type of a mom. I'm this type of a mom. Mm-hmm. And so again, the coaches taught me how to be, nice to myself instead of putting myself down all the time or listening to all those negative Nancy's and saying how I'm supposed to be this type of a mom or that type of a mom. It's like, no, I'm my own kind of a mom and I'm my own kind of a boss and an entrepreneur, and I just need to embrace that. So loving myself was such a big thing, and loving what I do and understanding that this is my passion and I need to flourish it. And that's, those were all little things. It sounds so simple, but that I'm very grateful to all my coaches for.
That is beautiful. As someone who self-love is definitely like a pillar of everything that I've been building. At one point, I called myself a self-love coach because that's how important it is, And I think that's really beautiful that that's come along in the journey for you. So
Thank you.
thank you for sharing.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
Amazing. So, is there anything that we have not covered off on that you would like to share?
Like I mentioned, there's a lot that I share with everybody. I want people to who are listening and feel insecure about something just to be graceful with yourself and soul search, right? Find that one individual. It will be placed in front of you. And sometimes we fight it, like I said before. You fight your own journey. But if you really open up to it, you will find what you're looking for. And money is not hard to get. Money is actually easier than you think it is. It's us and our limiting beliefs that make it hard. That we are hard on ourselves more than we have to be. But whatever it is, whatever your passion and your calling is, go after it. Because once you're there, work does not seem like work. Opportunities open up and you feel so much better. Figuring out a way that you have good people behind you, your coach, your financial advisor, your tax preparers, whatever it is in your corner to support you are so important, because what's the point of you working so hard for Uncle Sam to take such a big chunk of your money, of all of your hard money? So that's where a good tax strategist comes into play. You want them to apply every single strategy under the sun before you have to pay your tax liability. We all need to pay taxes. That's great. This country's built off of taxes. I don't mind, but I only want to pay my fair share. And the more I can keep, the more I can do for growth, for this economy, for, continuing the wealth building journey. So I tell clients, don't give up. Follow your dreams. There's ways that you can make it happen, and just be graceful with yourself.
Amazing. Okay, so are you ready for your final questions?
I'm ready as I can be.
All right. Well, the first question is, how would you describe your current relationship to yourself?
It's not as best as I want it to be. Okay. I just because I've learned certain things to be graceful with myself, to be nice to myself, there's still old habits we have to get rid of. But if I have to give it a score, between 1 and 10, 10 being best, I would say it's about an 8.5. I'm still working on it.
I love the work in progress
Yeah.
mentality. We're always still growing and evolving.
Yes.
All right. What is something you are currently working on?
My spiritual journey, meditation. That is something that I fight a lot. I don't know why. I think I'm afraid of what I'm going to discover when I'm in my quiet zone. Those are the habits I have to break of being nice to myself. So I recently I read a book called Visioning, Life Visioning, I believe it's called, and it talks a lot about stages in life. And the one of the final stages is that meditation part. And currently, that's what I'm working on.
Beautiful. As a yoga teacher, I fully support this in your journey.
Gotta give ourselves that space, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What do you consider most valuable to you right now?
Oh wow. Um, Life in general. I've had the unfortunate experience of losing, my kid's dad. Two
I'm so
years,
sorry.
two, it's going to be 3 years now. In the midst of me growing this business and just being so consumed by the business, and, you know, feeling, like I said before, like I'm going after this financial freedom, the success, having all the nice things, and then life happens. Life is short, and when something shocking like this happens, it just reminds you of why is your focus after a nice purse, nice shoes, nice, whatever, when you have everything you need right in front of you sometimes. And so life has slapped me in the face very hard, and it shifted. It shifted my thoughts. It shifted the way I am. And so for me, the most valuable thing is just that I'm roaming this earth. So still trying to figure things out, but I get to live every day here and help my kids through their journey. So that's definitely the most valuable thing.
I'm so sorry for your loss. And yeah, I loved when you were talking about your family and the importance of like that time with them and everything. So it really shines through. Okay, next question is, what is the best lesson that you've learned recently?
Oh gosh, best lesson. There's many. There's many. Every day there's something that there is to be learned. But not to, for me right now, I think it's not to expect that even with clients, right? Like I mentioned, I'm giving them this great message and this great advice, but not to expect that they're going to act on it, because if they're not ready, that has nothing to do with me. It's on them, right? And so not to expect others to act on something just because I feel that that's good for them.
Okay, amazing. I love that. And your final question is, what do you see as the purpose or meaning of life?
For me personally, like I said, it's going to be to be able to spend time, as much time and memories, make memories with those my loved ones. Um, my goal in life is, I've experienced all that I've experienced. I'm 46 years old. I know I can tell my kids all I've been through so that they don't make the same mistakes. But life has taught me that they're going to go through their own journey and make the same mistakes. That's just life. And I'm sure that many people out there listening, their parents are probably telling them not to do this, and they're probably doing it as we speak, right? Just be patient. It's life. We all have to go through that journey. But my goal is that if I can teach my kids some of the things I know now, and that maybe even if they don't put it into play today, that they'll put it into play in the early 20s or early 30s, then guess what? That's to me success, because I've bought them 10 years before they make that, for them to learn instead of waiting until their 40s to do something like mom did. So for me, that would be it.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, so how can people find you if they want to learn more about working with you?
Yes, so we're very present with our social media. So you can go on to Instagram at prominence.services and follow us on Instagram. We promote our monthly webinar there that we talked about passive income in real estate in different states. And then our website is prominencebusiness.com. There's free downloads on there if you need help keeping track with your income and your expenses, if you're self-employed. If you're looking at, becoming, in the real estate world, there's a lot of free things that you can download on there that talk about that. We're currently revamping our website to give people more on our website. So, I'm excited for that as well. I just want to give people the idea that other options exist out there, and, have them pick what fits best for them.
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you again so much, Suhei. This has been such an incredible conversation. I feel like there was so much amazing advice, and just like hearing your story was just so wonderful. So thank you so, so much for coming on the
No,
show.
thank you for having me. Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it very much.